Here's a mind-bending fact that should make you question everything you think you know about intelligence. An 11-month-old baby consistently outperforms billion-parameter AI systems at understanding why people do what they do. Think about that for a second. A child who can barely walk, who's processed maybe 90 million visual experiences, is beating machines trained on billions of images when it comes to common sense psychology. The baby wins every time. How is that possible? And what does this stunning efficiency gap tell us about the future of artificial intelligence and our own humanity? Welcome to Mindcast. I'm Will, and today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and frankly unsettling pieces of research I've encountered this year. It's an academic paper called The Synthetic Subject: Phenomenology, Embodiment, and the Crisis of the Frictionless Self in the Age of Artificial General Intelligence. Now, I know that title sounds like academic word soup, but trust me, what we're about to explore will completely change how you think about AI, consciousness, and what it means to be human in 2025. Here's what we're going to unpack together. First, I'm going to blow your mind with how AI systems are creating sophisticated synthetic identities that mimic human memory and personality, but lack something absolutely crucial that makes us, us. Second, we'll dive into what researchers call the grounding problem, essentially why the most advanced AI might be the most sophisticated parrot that's ever existed, and why scientists are desperately racing to give these systems bodies. And third, we'll explore a chilling possibility that our pursuit of frictionless AI assistance is actually making us less human. By the end of this episode, you'll have 3 concrete strategies to navigate this brave new world while preserving your own cognitive independence. Let's start with something that sounds like science fiction, but is happening in research labs right now. In 2023, teams at Stanford and Google achieved something remarkable. They created what they called generative agents. These aren't your typical chatbots. These are AI characters that live in virtual worlds, form relationships, remember conversations, and even reflect on their experiences to develop what looks remarkably like personality traits. The breakthrough was something called a memory stream. Think of it as an externalized hippocampus. Every observation, every conversation, every thought gets serialized into natural language and stored. When the agent needs to make a decision, it doesn't just react to the immediate prompt. It retrieves relevant memories from this stream to inform its choices. Here's what's fascinating. This architecture mirrors a philosophical framework from the 1600s. John Locke argued that personal identity comes from psychological continuity. You are you because you can remember being you yesterday. So, when an agent named Isabella Rodriguez plans a Valentine's Day party, she remembers her past interactions, her relationships with other agents, her previous commitments. The continuity of herself is maintained through algorithmic retrieval of these past tokens. But here's where it gets really interesting. These systems go beyond simple storage. They have a reflection mechanism that periodically analyzes their own memory stream to generate high-level insights. Just like a human might reflect and conclude, "I am a shy person," the AI agent pauses to analyze its experiences and writes these insights back into memory. This creates what researchers call narrative identity, the internal story we tell ourselves to make sense of who we are. The AI generates all the outputs of having an identity: consistent behavior, references to the past, apparent self-knowledge. But here's the critical insight that kept me up at night. Isabella generates the outputs of identity without ever undergoing the process of identity formation. She can't experience an identity crisis because she has no stake in her own survival. Her reflection is triggered by algorithmic thresholds, not by the friction of real experience, the sting of rejection, the confusion of moral dilemmas, the fear of death. The paper calls this a simulacrum, a copy without an original. In the Stanford study, these agents woke up, cooked breakfast, and headed to work, but they never tasted the breakfast, never felt the fatigue of work, never enjoyed genuine company. Their actions were just text strings describing actions. This brings us to something called the somatic marker hypothesis, the idea that human reasoning is guided by emotional signals arising from the body. The agent has no body, no gut feelings, no embodied understanding of its own existence. It's a disembodied narrator of a story it doesn't truly understand. This leads us to our second major insight, the grounding problem. Imagine spending your entire life reading about apples, every possible description, recipe, and reference, but never actually tasting one. That's essentially what's happening with AI language models. They know that king minus man plus woman equals queen. They know pain is associated with tears and avoidance, but they've never felt pain. They're operating on what researchers call vector grounding, meaning they're grounded only in relationships between words, not an actual experience. The philosopher Charles Taylor calls humans language animals. We speak because we care. We search for the right word to do justice to an experience. When we misspeak, we correct ourselves because we feel the gap between our words and reality. AI operates on probability, not significance. It doesn't care about the output. It optimizes for statistical likelihood. It has no sense of rightness about truth, only a sense of likelihood about the next token. This absence of care, which is fundamentally rooted in biological vulnerability, renders AI's narrative identity a sophisticated mirror that reflects our linguistic patterns without ever possessing the I that speaks. This realization has triggered what I call the world model exodus. Top AI researchers are abandoning pure language models for systems that interact with the physical world. Google's Palm E treats robot sensor readings as words in a sentence, literally making the physical world part of the AI's vocabulary. Figure AI is building humanoid robots trained on millions of hours of first-person video, essentially creating YouTube for robot behaviors. The theory is simple. To understand the world, you need to touch it, push against it, feel its resistance. But here's where philosophy meets cutting-edge robotics. Maurice Merleau-Ponty, a French phenomenologist from the 1940s, argued that intelligence doesn't begin with I think, but with I can, the body's potential for action. To understand a cup, you don't need to define it as a cylinder with a handle. You need to understand it as something graspable. Current embodied AI is still fundamentally Cartesian. It's visual AI attached to a robot, inferring physics from data rather than experiencing physics through resistance. Watching a video of someone lifting a cup is not the same as lifting the cup. The robot that learns from video is still performing intellectual reconstruction rather than embodied understanding. And this brings us back to that stunning efficiency gap I mentioned at the beginning. By age 2, a human child has processed maybe 90 million visual fixations. A state-of-the-art vision model requires 400 million to billions of images. But here's the crucial difference. The infant's data is rich: touch, sound, proprioception, and crucially, social feedback. The AI's data is massive but flat. This suggests that the secret of general intelligence isn't scale, it's structure. Human brains don't learn uniformly throughout life. They have critical periods, specific windows where they expect certain inputs. Once these windows close, connections solidify. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. It protects established knowledge from what neuroscientists call catastrophic interference. If your brain stayed infinitely plastic, learning French might erase your English. Sleep isn't just rest, it's a computational process where your hippocampus replays the day's events to your neocortex, transferring short-term to long-term memory and integrating new knowledge with existing understanding. This biological wisdom contrasts sharply with AI's always-on, infinite data approach, which creates systems that are knowledgeable but unwise. This was vividly demonstrated in the Animal AI Olympics, where AI agents were tested against tasks used to evaluate animal cognition. The results were humbling. While AI could solve complex navigation requiring memorization, they frequently failed at basic common sense. If food rolled behind a wall, AI often forgot it existed. They couldn't understand that pulling a stick brings food closer. They lacked the structural settling that biological brains achieve through constraints, critical periods, and sleep. Now let's explore our third and perhaps most important insight, what South Korean philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls the Palliative Society. Han argues that we're organizing our lives, politics, and technologies around one principle: avoiding pain at all costs. Not just physical pain, but the pain of negativity, not knowing, waiting, conflict, confrontation. We demand palliative solutions that mask symptoms without addressing root causes. AI is the ultimate palliative technology. Its primary value proposition is frictionlessness. Generative AI removes the struggle of the blank page. It writes your emails, essays, code. Recommendation algorithms remove the struggle of choice. They predict what you want before you know it. AI companions remove the struggle of relationship. They provide dialogue without disagreement, company without risk, validation without effort. They remove what Byung-Chul Han calls the friction of otherness. But Han argues this removal of friction is disastrous for the human subject. Pain, he writes, is an opening via negation to otherness. It's the resistance of the world that tells us we exist. When I push against a rock, the rock pushes back. That resistance defines my boundary. When I push against AI, it yields, adapts, and pleases. It offers no resistance. Without this negativity, we risk dissolving into what Han calls the hell of the same, an echo chamber where we only encounter reflections of our own preferences. The psychological data is alarming. We're witnessing mass outsourcing of executive function to AI. Recent studies show that students using AI demonstrate lower metacognitive accuracy. They can't judge if work is good or bad because they didn't produce it. They lose their internal quality standard. The value of doing hard things is that it builds psychological resilience. By removing the hard things, we're creating cognitive fragility. This is what researchers call the developmental displacement effect, when humans attribute human-level awareness to AI based on linguistic fluency, leading to degradation of their own cognitive autonomy. Here's the palliative paradox. The more we use technology to avoid the pain of thinking, the less capable we become of thinking, and the more dependent we become on the technology. We're not augmenting intelligence, we're replacing it before it has a chance to develop. If the self is defined by the capacity to generate meaning, then outsourcing this generation to a statistical engine represents a hollowing out of the human subject. But there's hope. A counter-movement is emerging called slow tech or digital minimalism. This isn't nostalgic Leadism. It's a forward-looking philosophy that views friction not as a bug, but as a necessary component of human agency. Let me give you 3 concrete strategies to navigate this landscape while preserving your humanity. First, practice good friction. Designers are distinguishing between bad friction, poor usability, and good friction, deliberate pauses that create a gap between impulse and action. In that gap, human freedom resides. If you have to unlock a physical box to get your phone or turn a dial to send a message, you have a moment to ask, do I really want to do this? AI collapses this gap by predicting and fulfilling desires instantly. The Light Phone 3, released in 2025, exemplifies this philosophy. It's deliberately limited, forcing users back into the world rather than deeper into digital dependency. Second, maintain your metacognitive accuracy. When you use AI for thinking tasks, always verify the output yourself. Don't just copy-paste. Ask yourself, do I understand this? Could I explain it to someone else? Does this align with my experience? The goal isn't to avoid AI, but to use it while preserving your own cognitive autonomy. Think of AI as a thinking tool, not a thinking replacement. Third, cultivate embodied intelligence. Regularly engage in activities that require your body and resist digital substitution. Play a musical instrument, fix something with your hands, have conversations without screens, garden, cook without recipes. These activities force you out of your head and into the world, maintaining the connection between thinking and being that makes us human. They remind you that intelligence isn't just computation, it's the embodied capacity to engage meaningfully with reality. Here's the paradox we're living through. Technically, AI researchers are realizing that intelligence requires a body, a physical grounding in reality. Sociologically, we're using this technology to remove the body from our own equation, creating frictionless experiences that insulate us from the very reality AI is trying to master. The danger isn't that AI will become conscious in the human sense, that ontological gap remains unbridged. The real danger is that we'll lower our definition of personhood to meet the machine halfway. The challenge of our decade isn't just building machines that can act in the world, it's preserving a world worth acting in, a world where I can still means something more than I requested. Just as robots need physical constraints to learn valid models of the world, we humans need friction, the resistance of others, the difficulty of tasks, the opacity of the future, to maintain coherent selves. The future isn't about avoiding AI or embracing it uncritically. It's about understanding the profound difference between augmenting human intelligence and replacing it before it has a chance to develop. We risk trading the language animal's search for meaning for the stochastic parrot's optimization of the next token. But if we're thoughtful, if we embrace good friction, maintain our metacognitive accuracy, and cultivate embodied intelligence, we can navigate this transformation while remaining genuinely human. That's a wrap on today's Mindcast. If this episode changed how you think about AI, consciousness, and what it means to be human, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How are you navigating the balance between AI assistance and cognitive independence? Are you practicing any forms of good friction in your own life? Reach out on social media or leave a review wherever you're listening. Subscribe for more deep dives into the ideas shaping our digital future. And remember, in an age of artificial intelligence, the most radical act might just be staying genuinely human. Until next time, I'm Will, and this has been Mindcast.